Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to everyone who showed up early. We've got about 5 minutes until the webinar is going to begin. So grab a cup of coffee and I will look forward to chatting with all of you very shortly. Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you let me know if you can hear me okay, please? Great, thank you so much. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Carrie Simpson. I'm the CEO of Managed Sales Pros. We've been in business for about 7 years. We specialize in outbound sales appointment setting for managed service providers. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. On the right-hand side, those of you who already mentioned that you could hear me okay have figured out how to do this. But for those of you who may be new to the GoToWebinar platform, on the right-hand side, you'll find a box where you can type in questions. If you think of something you'd like to ask, I usually ask people to hold their questions until the end of content delivery so that we can do a Q&A. But if you don't want to forget about it, just pop it in there and we'll get around to it. This webinar will be available on demand upon completion. It usually takes me a couple of hours to get it up and live, but if you'd like to share it or if you'd like to review it again, it will be available to you after. So if you've got a really busy day today and you're just glancing back and forth at the screen, no problem. It's going to be available to you for as long as you'd like it to. So the first thing I'd like to know today, if you don't mind typing in the answer to this question, is how are you currently finding new leads or new lists? Are you buying them online? Are you networking to identify new opportunities? Or are you already outsourcing to a company like ours where you're able to have leads delivered to you? I wanted to focus today on buying lists specifically because of the pandemic. And I have to tell you, I'm tired of talking about the pandemic. I'm tired of getting emails about the pandemic. I'm sure everybody has a little bit of pandemic fatigue here as well. But it's a really important topic today because lists were already fairly out of date and inaccurate prior to COVID-19. And now the quality of data online is anybody's guess. So previously, any data purchased online, we would expect to be about 30% inaccurate right from the beginning. Now, I personally believe that those lists are going to be closer to 50% inaccurate. I've calculated the numbers using some fairly basic data. So a 30% inaccuracy in 1,000 leads, for example, can result in a waste of about $6,500 per 1,000 leads, assuming that you're paying an in-house telemarketer about $15 an hour to do your outbound calling. And since we're an outbound calling firm, I didn't really get into the ins and outs of direct marketing campaigns to a 30 to 50% inaccurate list or direct mail campaigns to a 30 or 50% inaccurate list. I'm talking today only about outbound calling because that's my area of expertise. So we have purchased lists from multiple list brokers over the years. Some of the options available to you and to me. I mean, we don't have any secret or magical access to data sources that you don't. We purchased from Dun & Bradstreet, which is also branded as Hoover's. We purchased from Sales Genie, which was previously Info USA or Info Canada. There is an online service called Growbots. That is not an online data list provider. However, it is a service that does outbound marketing for MSPs, and several people on the webinar or who registered for the webinar today mentioned that they were using Growbots, so I wanted to throw it in there. Zoom Info was recently purchased by Discover.org. Discover.org was an enterprise data platform. Not very effective for small businesses simply because the cost was prohibitive and the contact information was skewed towards companies that were trying to sell to internal large IT departments. And most of our clients are looking for companies that have between 20 and 200 employees, so nowhere near the enterprise level, and they're normally looking to enter an account at the C or VP level and not into the IT department itself. We do work with some companies that supplement or augment internal IT, but there are fewer of those on my client roster than there are companies that are looking for small businesses where they can completely hand off their IT support to a managed service provider. So Discover.org isn't a great fit for companies that are looking for smaller businesses to work with. And then I'm sure all of you have received emails saying, would you like to acquire data that is focused around this specific thing? So for our company, my emails usually look like this. Would you like to acquire a list of ConnectWise users? Or would you like to acquire a list of Autotask users? And then they'll list another 20 softwares that they procure data or user intent data from. And the emails are usually from a Gmail account or from something that's a little bit sketchy. And they claim to have complete contact information for these companies. We've pursued a few of them just to see what they were like. And inevitably what we found is that these data brokers are just scraping websites. So they're going to, www.managedserviceprovider.com and just pulling whatever contact information on that website is on the website. So you're going to get the same generic phone numbers and the same generic email addresses that you could get yourself if you just logged on online and looked for them. So they aren't a great investment unless you're completely starting from zero, in which case, there's 100 ways that you could begin building your lists. And I'm going to talk about how we do that here. So buying lists creates some challenges when you're prospecting. The data is inaccurate, it's incomplete, it's normally generic, and it's always overpriced. We subscribe to Dun & Bradstreet and InfoUSA, and I can tell you just from several client conversations over the course of the last few months that I have clients who are saying, hey, there's these 20 law firms that I want to do business with right now, and none of them are on the database that you sent over to us. So the data that I'm purchasing doesn't align with the information that the prospect or the MSP is actually seeing in their market. And that's a huge issue. If I'm going to buy a list of data so that I can prospect for an IT service provider, I want to make sure that their top prospects are in that list, and we're not seeing that. And not only are we not seeing the top prospects that they want to pursue in that list, we are seeing over 30% inaccuracy, meaning people are being fired or furloughed. Companies have closed down completely, and the data wasn't that good to begin with. So you take the garbage data to begin with, and you've got a whole bunch of problems. It's a garbage in, garbage out problem, and it's something that's very preventable. So using bad data for your marketing means wasted budget. So if you're paying a sales rep or you yourself are doing your own prospecting and you're using inaccurate data to do it, assume that 30% of your day was wasted. And right now, up to 50% of your day is being wasted. So you're paying somebody to dial the phone, or you're dialing the phone yourself. You're making 100 to 120 calls a day. That's standard for an outbound telemarketer at my agency. If 50% of their time is being wasted times the 28 agents that I have, that means I am losing an extraordinary amount of revenue and productivity every day. You may only have one sales rep that you're losing productivity on, but that's still going to translate into half the amount of work, half the amount of leads, and half the amount of opportunities. And if your closing ratio is 1 in 3, and you're only getting half of the number of opportunities that you could, your closing ratio is really going to be decreased by the amount of data that's inaccurate in your funnel. So when you're thinking about how you're going to go out building your sales pipeline, consider that the worse your data is, the worse the opportunities are going to be. So while it may seem like a lot of work and very small details at the beginning, the little things at the beginning create the big opportunities at the end. And it's not just your own time that gets wasted. If you have a marketing team or a sales team or just a marketing person or a sales person, they're going to be frustrated when half of their day is spent doing nothing productive, doing nothing that increases their opportunities to earn commission, doing nothing that allows them to feel like they are producing desirable results for their employer. And most people want to succeed. You put them in front of 1,000 good contacts, they're going to have a good day. You put them in front of 1,000 garbage contacts, they're going to have a garbage day. And your retention will suffer if you're hiring brand new agents. So let's say you advertised, you identified a rep that you really liked, you seduced them to come over from the IT company they were working at previously, you put them at their desk and you've given them this garbagey database to wade through, and you're expecting them to perform at the level that they said they could perform at their previous employer. And they've shown up and now they're discovering that what you're providing them with isn't helpful. And that's going to lead to resentment, it's going to lead to frustration, and it's going to lead to turnover. And turnover is expensive. Every time I lose a rep, $5,000 walks out the door, because that's how much it costs me to identify, recruit, and train a new one. And if you do that at scale, we're a call center, that's all we do. The more people that leave, the less money I make. And that is a problem that we had to solve years ago, and we solved it by identifying better data. Using bad data creates an empty funnel. So the way we like to look at it here is that for every quarter that you're not prospecting, or you're not prospecting well, you're losing a year's worth of opportunity. So it kind of scales up. You have one bad month, that's a bad quarter. You have one bad quarter, that's a bad year. So the worse your data, the emptier your funnel, the less opportunity there, the less follow-up activities, the less ability you have to continue working those opportunities. So while 1,000 junky leads may cost you $100, importing those 1,000 junky leads into your CRM and then trying to work them doesn't just lead to fewer appointments, it could lead to your business dropping next year, because you just don't have the pipeline built that you need to continue building on the success of previous quarters. So if you think about sales prospecting as a high investment savings account, my parents told me that if I put $50 in the bank every month, starting when I was 18, I would never have to work again when I was 50. They were right, and I didn't follow that advice, and I wish that I had, but that's what prospecting is like. The more you put into the top of the funnel, the more comes out the bottom. And the longer you wait to do it, or the slower you work at it, the less you're able to chip away at good opportunities, the less things you have to follow up with. So really the only benefit that an outsourced lead generation company brings to the table for an MSP is speed and immediacy and skill. So we don't do anything that you couldn't do yourself. We're just able to start doing it tomorrow because everybody knows how to do it, and our process is identical, whether you're an MSP in New York or an MSP in Florida. We've just figured out how to scale it. So we don't do anything magical or special. Everything we do, you can do yourself. One of the big problems with using a cloud-based CRM that you then fill with an enormous amount of data is that you can't find anything. So looking for things takes longer than calling things. If all of your data has holes in it and you don't know where it is and everything's junky and cluttered, it's going to take you 10 times as long to prospect. And if you'd had a clean, neat, tidy CRM with user-defined fields that are put in there properly and data that was clean before it went in, you can immediately, in a couple of clicks, find any information that you're looking for. So you think about wasted time, wasted productivity, wasted opportunities, it comes from garbage. And then workflow and automation fails. I don't know how many of you have already automated some of your prospecting process. So we automate anything that doesn't require personalization. So if somebody says, hey, can you send me an email? We just click a button and that email goes. It's not customized. We don't spend any time writing it. Our clients sign off on it and it just goes automatically. If your data is junky and somebody asks you to do something like that, and you should click a button and it should trigger your workflow, if the data that your system is working on is inaccurate, that's just going to lead to you having to untie all that mess. And worst case scenario, you've only got one opportunity to make a first impression on your prospects if you're sending them badly crafted or badly timed, or worse, badly labeled. Like, not everyone gets their nose out of joint when you put the wrong name on their email, but some people do. And there's a high percentage of those people who will just throw you into junk and never look at your emails again, never take your calls again. You know, if my name is Carrie and you're constantly calling me and asking for Karen, at some point I'm going to say, I've already told you 3 times that my name is Carrie. I don't want to do business with that company. And maybe I'm just a little moody, but I suspect other people feel the same when they're being marketed to. I would like to think that my business is important to you. And if you're always addressing me by the wrong name and you're not fixing or updating anything, that's going to come through and it's going to be moderately offensive. So how do you buy better lists? So if you already have a subscription to a data service, or if you're considering purchasing data from Hoovers or from Sales Genie, there are ways that you can create better lists. And I'm going to go through those with you now. So the first thing you want to do is choose high percentage shot industries. So what do I mean by that? Companies where there is a 1-to-1 ratio of computer users to employees. So some of the non-high percentage shot industries would be things like transportation. I don't need a computer to be a courier, for example. So a transportation company of some kind could have 100 employees. So, hey, that looks like a great opportunity, 100 employees, let's look at that. Well, if 90 of those employees just drive around in their cars all day and only 10 of those employees work in the office, and of those 10 employees in the office, only 5 of them use a computer, that's not a high percentage shot industry. So we're looking for companies where everybody has a computer. So things like accounting firms, law firms, engineering firms, most service-based businesses. We eliminate things like retail, hospitality, and transportation. Next, you'll have the opportunity to choose what types of companies you want. So first, you're going to look at what's called an SIC code. So you can get very granular with those, or you can get very broad. So you can pull every piece of data for legal companies or companies that are associated with the word legal, but that's not going to necessarily give you a bunch of law firms. It might give you bail bondsmen, for example, which are usually small storefronts with only a couple of computers. So you want to get a little more specific when you're looking at buying data. So you don't want to just buy companies in the legal industry. You want to buy lists of companies that are actually law firms. And then you're able to sort by number of employees and things like that. Eliminate all subsidiaries, branches, franchises, and anything that doesn't have a headquarter, anything that isn't the headquarter office from your list pool. So the reason we do that is most of the time buying decisions for subsidiaries, branches, or franchises are made from a head office. They aren't made at the individual location. So you could have, for example, a company like Massage Envy, which is a massage franchise place. One of our clients actually secured an opportunity with the head office of that company, which is why it came to mind. But if you called each individual franchise, all of them would say, we get our IT support done in-house, right? So somebody, they're buying it directly from their head office. Same with, I mean, in Canada, we only have a handful of banks and we have some credit unions, but you know, the Royal Bank has hundreds of locations and all of them are supported by the Royal Bank. So you're wasting your data budget and you're wasting your sales reps' time if you're having them call into things where we already know that the decisions are going to be made at head office and they're not really looking for boots on the ground support. They have the budget and the ability to support all of their franchisees or subsidiaries through their head office. So those are usually low percentage shots, which is why we don't pull that data. I always eliminate government agencies from my data pool. And I do that because most of the time government agencies are going to go to RFP. So they're going to tender it, they're going to go with somebody who's shopping on price, or they already know who they want to go with and they have to do this because they're legally required to tender it. So it's not usually a good opportunity. And there is normally, 7 layers of bureaucracy to get through. So for a telemarketing agency, the odds on us getting a client into a government agency are very, very slim. And then you look at things like security clearances. There are some states where government is a very attractive place for an IT company to function, but without having a specific understanding of all of the systems that the government agency requires, all of the background check requirements that that agency has, your telemarketing agency isn't going to be that successful, and your telemarketer that you've hired is likely not going to succeed either. Though that prospecting is usually done by somebody with government connections. So if you don't have the book already, if you don't have the list, or you hire a sales rep who already knows all those people, great, let them have at it. Otherwise, don't pull government data. Sort by number of employees and not by revenue. And that's important because most of the time data brokers call companies and confirm information, and revenue is one of those things that people don't like to provide. So most of the time, if you're pulling data, you're going to have the option of pulling it prospect provided and verified, and that'll be the more expensive data, or not verified. But either way, if they don't know the answer to the question, so revenue, for example, no private company is under any obligation to reveal their revenue numbers ever. So those numbers are wildly inaccurate. Number of employees, however, most of the time, companies are filling forms out constantly talking about how many employees they have. And there may be a range. So on LinkedIn, for example, you'll see 1 employee to 10 employees, 10 employees to 50, 50 employees to 200. There's ranges and not specific numbers, but most of the time you're going to have a closer and more accurate count of head count versus revenue count. And right now, post-COVID, people's revenue numbers from last year are completely irrelevant, and probably their employee numbers are as well. So that's one of the reasons that I'm cautioning people against purchasing data right now. Most of the data is not going to be accurate, and you're going to have to do a lot of work to make it accurate. Aiming higher is always better. So every company in the world wants to look bigger than they are, right? If you're sitting down with a prospect and you only have 4 employees, you're not going to say that most of the time. You're going to allow them to assume that you're bigger than they are if you are. And some companies are just going to outright lie about it. So if you want 15 computers, make sure you begin pulling at 20 plus employees, and so on and so forth. And honestly, with the data brokers out there right now, so Dun & Bradstreet, Info USA, any of them, buying contact names and emails right now is going to be a complete waste of your money. So you can buy data, but I would eliminate the costlier data pulls that provide email addresses. Most of the time, the email address isn't going directly to the decision maker, and most of the time, the phone numbers aren't going directly to the decision maker, even if they already have the name. My biggest issue around data right now is that you're going to buy the list and you're going to have to clean it up yourself anyhow before you're going to be able to use it for prospecting, which means you're going to do all of the work plus buy the junky data. So why not just build your own list? So before you begin, figure out how you get data from the source into your CRM or your PSA, depending on what you're prospecting in. So in ConnectWise, for example, if you do your prospecting in ConnectWise, ConnectWise has a very set way that you can import data, which means all of your fields have to use the exact same naming conventions. So you can use, if it says contact first name, your file also needs to say contact first name. So if it's contact first name, contact last name, account. So is it account? Is it company? Is it lead? How does your CRM sort data by field? Make sure that the spreadsheet that you're going to create to build your list identically matches the spreadsheet that your CRM provider has recommended. So if you look, we use Zoho, we're a Zoho shop. So what I was able to do with Zoho is download a sample of the format that they want for uploading data. And then you can see Zoho's lists look like this. Everyone has a unique lead ID, the person that owns the lead. So usually for us, that would be one outbound agent usually supports 2 different MSPs. So that might be, Mary Smith, she's the caller on that campaign. That's who the lead gets assigned to. And then what is the company? And then we have a first name, last name. Some companies will just have name, and you'll need both the first and the last in the same column. And all of your data will import skewed or incorrectly if you don't match up the fields identically. Same with phone numbers. Do you use brackets around the first one? Do you use dashes? Is it a combination of both? Can you use either? Before you spend a lot of time building a list to import into your CRM or your PSA, make sure that you've done your research and figured out how it's going to upload. So try it with a handful of leads first, as opposed to creating a list of 1,000 leads and then trying to import it and then finding out that your CRM suppresses anything where the fields don't match up. So one of the nice things about our Zoho system is that it will suppress all duplication. And that's important because you don't want to end up constantly re-entering information that's incorrect. So if you buy a list from Hoover's and then you buy a list from Info USA and there's a 50% overlap on that list, if your CRM doesn't suppress duplication, you're just going to keep uploading that same contact over and over and over again. And if it's an incorrect contact, now you've got 20 pieces of data as opposed to 2 that are completely incorrect and wasting someone's time. Then you should be able to go into your CRM or your PSA and set up unique user-defined fields for prospecting. So these are the ones that we use internally. We want to know number of desktops, number of users, number of servers, how old is the equipment they're using, when is their current contract with their current provider going to renew, what are their pain points, what's the name of their current provider, what type of IT support are they receiving, how many phones do they have supported by that company. And then these are all internal fields where we schedule appointments. Did we send the invite? Yes. Did they show up? Yes. Did we verify all the information? Yes. So you can set up any fields you want. You can make it as complicated or as simple as you want. So the more you know about how your CRM or PSA works, the more customized you can create campaigns for. So for example, if I wanted to send out a campaign of some kind using all of this data, I could say, hey, Zoho, show me every company in our database that has more than 50 computers and whose contract expires within the next 90 days. And that creates a prospecting list of highly qualified and ready to purchase leads for anybody in our database. So you can mix and match it any way you want. The more defined fields you have, the more granular your marketing can become. And we have a finite number of fields in Zoho, and I assume that ConnectWise and Salesforce and all the other ones also have finite numbers of fields. So you'll want to carefully choose the ones that you want to work with, and then make sure that they're doing what you need them to do. So if your user-defined fields are never getting filled out, do you even need that field, or is it just cluttering up your space? Because the more fields you add, the less information you can see on the screen in front of you. So I personally, I work on a laptop. I always have. I don't use multiple screens. Our call center, everybody has one horizontal and one vertical screen. One has the big list that they're working on, and the other one has information that they need for prospecting on it. Myself personally, I'm constantly toggling back and forth. So the more clutter I have on my screen or just on that screen from my CRM, the less effective I am that day, because I have to start scrolling to find any information. So the cleaner and tidier your prospecting space, and I just mean that from a data perspective, I don't care if you have coffee cups everywhere, the cleaner your screen is, the easier it is for you to work with your data. So your 1-to-1 ratio businesses, plumbers can still bill if their computers aren't working, right? So if I can still do my job without a computer, I'm probably not a good fit for a managed service provider. My brother owns a landscaping company, and he's had a landscaping company for 20 years now. When we first started doing this, I remember asking him constantly, like, when are you going to get a computer? Like, all he had was like a paper book that he wrote receipts on, and then like a calendar. And he said, Carrie, I'm going to buy a computer the minute they can build a fence for me. I mean, 5 years later, of course, he did have a computer, and so did everyone else, but this still rings true. If you can do your job without going online, you aren't a great fit for an MSP. A lawyer, on the other hand, can't bill if they can't access their files. So when you're pulling data, choose industries where every employee is dependent on technology and every employee should have at least one device. Avoid companies that share workstations. They're terrible to work with, and they're terrible to prospect into. Retail and hospitality are two big ones that come to mind. And the problem, aside from not having enough computers with things like retail and hospitality, is they keep weird hours. So you prospect from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. probably in your business hours. The owner of a retail establishment may not even open their store until noon, and they may stay open until 10. And hospitality is worse. If they're only open for dinner, you're never going to be able to prospect into that unless you're going to pay somebody to go door knock for you. And again, avoiding industries that use RFPs is going to create far better data for you. This is how we build our list here. It's simple, and I tested this before I came online by asking my 9-year-old daughter to do this. So I'm telling you, anybody can do it. It's not hard, and it doesn't take very long. So you go to Google, and you start from just a plain Google search bar, and in this case, I'm searching law firms near me. And the law firms near me is going to pop up a map, and it's going to show me all the law firms in my area. And the farther I want to go out, the more data it's going to give me. So I am in Winnipeg, Canada right now, not a big city, a very spread out city. So in some cities, you're going to be able to go 10 blocks and find 100 law firms. Now in our city, not so much. But it's going to give me a list on the left-hand side of every law firm sorted by how close they are to me. And I really like that, because you're not going to want to drive an hour and a half to the other end of the city in rush hour to go to a meeting that you may or may not even want. So start building from your zip code or your postal code and work out from there. I like this too, because you can see the star ratings. You can see any information that you want to about that law firm. You click on the lead, and now you can see their phone number and their address, their hours, and what does their building look like. So if you click on Rutley Law Office and it shows you a picture of an abandoned building, that's a lead that you don't need to add to your database. It's not, they're not in business anymore. But this looks like a little office building. I know this. I live like literally a block away from here, so I know where this is. I'm going to cut and paste that information into the spreadsheet that I created earlier, matching the user-defined fields that are in my CRM. And this seems like a no-brainer kind of thing to do, but the next thing you do is go to LinkedIn and just put in the name of the company. So I put in Rutley Law Office, and it comes up with John Rutley. He's not in my network, but that's okay. I only have 26 connections on LinkedIn. So if you have a lot of connections in your community on LinkedIn, there's a few more things you can do past this. So if John was a second-degree connection, I could ask anybody in my network that's also connected to John to introduce me to him. So that's a really good way to start working your network a little more effectively. So we found Rutley Law Office. Now we found his name. He's the owner of the business. I'm going to cut and paste that into the CSV that I pulled earlier. The company goes in, first name, last name, title, email. I already have the phone number and the website and the address from the Google search that I did. Now I have all the information that I need to make a phone call. The next thing I'm going to do before I even pull that data into my CRM is call them and verify the information. And this is the quickest and easiest way that I found to do that. It's a really good opener for prospecting or just for data verification. But hi there, it's Carrie Simpson calling from ABC IT. Who should I speak to provide a quote for IT support? This is a great question because it's open-ended, which means you're not saying something like, can I talk to somebody about providing a quote for IT support? It's a question that you can't answer yes or no to, and it requires an answer. So you can ask this question to anybody that picks up the phone. You don't need to get the decision maker on the phone to qualify this lead. So find out who is the actual decision maker. So if they don't say, hey, that's John Rutley, they say, oh, that's Elizabeth Smith. Oh, great, what's Elizabeth's title, please? Because what you don't want is to start filling your database with the list of in-house IT administrators, which sometimes is where they'll send you when you start talking about IT support. The other thing I'd like to mention here is don't mention managed services. That's an industry term that we use at trade shows to describe the business model that we've selected to run our IT support companies. Buyers or end users understand IT support. While you have that person on the phone, whoever they are, and don't assume that it isn't the person that you want to talk to, but while you've got them there, find out how to spell the name, confirm that, So now you know if Carrie sounds like Karen and you don't confirm it, and you just spent all your time confirming all my information and gathering an email address, but you're sending to Karen at Managed Sales Pros instead of Carrie at Managed Sales Pros, all that work has been thrown in the garbage. So make sure they spell it out for you, find out what the title is, ask for a direct extension and an email address. And then, if they don't sound annoyed, and as you make more calls, you're going to learn that some people don't mind chatting and some people really don't want to. If you can hear phones going off in the background and it sounds like this person's really, really busy, don't ask 7 more questions, right? You found out the information that you need. When do they usually take calls, and how do they prefer to be contacted? So especially now with so many people working remotely for the first time and so many people not setting up their IVRs correctly for that, some people aren't even getting phone calls currently. So you might want to find out, are they working from the office or are they working from home? Do they check their email more often than they check their voicemail? Find out how to contact them most effectively. So this eliminates bad contact information before import. You don't have to go back and fix anything if everything's right before it goes in. And it confirms decision maker names before you chase them down. So if I call into that company and I don't reach anyone, or I don't bother calling into that company, and then I hand that lead off to my sales rep or my lead gen company, and I want them to track down this person, and that person doesn't exist, that's like 20 or more touches to nowhere. So if I'm asking for Joe Smith and the lead is Jerry Smith, Joe Smith doesn't exist, I can't get a hold of anyone there. You're wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money trying to reach people that don't make decisions or don't actually exist. If you do this correctly, you can even pre-qualify these opportunities. So great, I'd love to leave a voicemail for Mr. Rutley. If you remember Mr. Rutley from earlier, he owns that law firm. Before you transfer me, our service usually provides ROI for companies that have more than 20 computers. How many computers do you have there? Now, so this isn't like asking what their revenue is. You're not asking anything invasive. You just want to know, are we going to waste their time or not? You don't want to chase them down if they only have 10 computers. So if they have more than 20, great. How are you currently receiving your IT support? Oh, well, we use a company called 123IT. Okay, great. When will you be reviewing competitive quotes? So again, this is a conversation with anyone who answers the phone. You don't have to look for anyone in particular. Hopefully, the person answering the phone has something to do with the IT support process in the company. And the person who answers the phone could be anyone. So remember, anyone in today's IT setup can be the person who is the quote unquote receptionist, right? I answer our phone all the time. Tracy answers our phone all the time. And if somebody tries to roll over either of us to talk to one of us, we find it entertaining, but you're not going to get very far treating the person that answers the phone like the hired help. They could very well be the owner of the business. So you want to maintain that highly respectful talking to everyone like they are the owner of the business, like they do own the business, and like they are a champion or somebody who is affected by a good IT environment. So there isn't one person at a company whose life doesn't get drastically better when you have good IT support. So whether this person is constantly having problems with their computer, or if they're the person that is named on the single point of contact contract, for example, and they're the ones who are scheduling all the IT tickets, like this person could be the decision maker, and if not the decision maker, a champion or influencer, or they could be married to the person that owns the company. So that's always something to consider. Don't assume that the person that picks up the phone isn't the person that's going to make the buying decision. The best way to start doing this is to set a goal. So add 10 new leads a day to your list. And then when the list gets to 100, upload that list and start working it. Or just spend one full day prepping leads to prospect into that month. I think the setting a goal for 10 a day is the better approach, simply because we're all busy and this is a new thing, and doing it in small chunks is a whole lot easier than all of a sudden deciding that you're going to drastically change your workday by trying to do 100 of them every other day, for example. So get 10 new leads into your database every day, and start watching your funnel fill up. So how many leads do you need? That's a very how long is a piece of string question. You can make 8 to 10 calls an hour without using a predictive or click to dial integration. Each lead on average requires 3 to 20 touches. So just math that out. How many hours do you have to do this? So if you have 1 extra hour a day, you only need as many leads as you can follow up on yourself. If you have a sales team that you need to feed leads to, obviously that number is going to be much, much higher, but don't go trying to build a list of 1,000 prospects today, because you won't be able to call 1,000 prospects for a significant period of time. And by the time you get to prospect 1,000, that data is stale again. So assume that your clean data is really only good for about 6 months to 12 months. And as you prospect more often, so if you begin with 10 a day, for example, so today you find those 10 leads, and then tomorrow you prospect into those 10 leads, and that's your kind of your cadence that you're going to follow. We're going to find 10 new people to call, and the next day we're going to call them. So that means every day you're looking for 10 new people to call, and you're trying to get in touch with those 10 people. As your prospecting database grows, and as your amount of time spent prospecting grows, you're going to have less time for net new prospecting, because you're going to be following up from other things that you're doing. So if you've got 2 hours a day budgeted for prospecting, remember that net new and follow-up are different activities. And the better you get at it, the more you're going to have to live in that second follow-up funnel and not that first net new funnel. So budget your time accordingly. If you want someone else to do this for you, we can help you. We build sales databases. You can buy a custom prospecting database for your MSP in batches of 100 leads. We charge $2,000 per list, and we have confirmed decision maker names and emails included in that purchase. And if you order one before July 3rd, we'll give you 10 extra more. So I hope that was helpful. Other services that we offer: consulting, training, lead generation, and what we're best known for is our full cycle sales appointment setting. If you'd like to talk to anybody about any of those services, just send us a quick email at hello@managedsalespros.com. And now we've got about 15 minutes left for questions. So if you've got some questions, I'd love to answer them. If you don't have any questions, that's fine too, because my air conditioning isn't working. I want to go outside. So first question, when you sell the list, is it in a format for a specific CRM? Yes, it can be. We just need you to be specific about the format that you require and give us a sample. And the typical turnaround on creating a list varies wildly depending on the number of leads that you require. So the turnaround on 100 leads, probably 2 weeks. And of course, those numbers are skewed a little bit now because fewer people are at work, fewer people are easily accessed. So whereas before it might have taken us 12 attempts to get all that information, it will now take us 17 to 20 attempts to get all of that information. So it could extend a little bit. Normally what happens is you'll say, hey, Carrie, I want 100 leads, and I want them to be law firms and accounting firms and only companies that have a minimum of 20 employees. So you don't send us a list of 100 companies and ask us to go find the contact information for them. We deliver 100 leads to you, and we just skip the ones that we can't verify. And next question, do you have any advice for MSPs in large metro areas? I mean, you couldn't swing a cat in Chicago without hitting an ideal prospect for an MSP. So one of the things that our clients do is drive around, for example, industrial parks or areas that have a lot of office buildings and go inside the offices and then start listing, like writing down the names of the companies in those office buildings. So that works really well. And then you can go back and Google search them. So if you don't want to use Google, or you want to get out of the office once in a while, or it's also nice to allow your sales team a little bit of a break from the office. If they're open to door knocking, for example, you can just send them into office buildings with little treats. Like I usually suggest send a Starbucks card and a media kit with a sales rep and have them just go knock on the doors of office buildings, hand them out, and now you've got a ready-made reason to give them a call back. And it takes a special kind of jerk to not say thank you for a coffee card or for a gift. So you should at least get the opportunity to talk to the person that answers the phone at that point. My pleasure. Thanks for attending today. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions today, so I will give you back 15 minutes of your day. I appreciate you attending, and I hope you have a great summer. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, we will see you online again soon. Oh, somebody just asked, how was my experience with Hoovers? It was no better or no worse than any other data broker available. The one thing that I didn't like about Hoovers is that the subscription is use it or lose it and doesn't roll over. So if you buy too many leads and you can't use them within the time frame allowed, you'll lose all of them. So what we normally did was, if we were nearing the end of our subscription year and we still had 100,000 contacts left, we would go into cities that we knew that we'd be prospecting into for MSPs next year and pull that data. But again, the data goes stale so quickly that buying data in advance isn't that useful. What we've learned is it's better to just go in and pull it right before you need it. And even better, it's just go online and build it yourself. It's a little more expensive to build the list at the beginning, but the productivity and the ROI increase from using that good data instead of that cheap junky data is significant. And somebody asked about the coffee card. You'll have access to the entire webinar. It'll be live on our website at managedsalespros.com in a couple of hours. And you'll get an email with information after the webinar. So thank you again for attending. All right, everyone. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining. Talk to you soon.